The wind carried a taste of dust and rain across the high plains as Calder Vance rode toward the stagecoach stop. He'd spent half his life out here, raising cattle, fixing fences, and burying silence with work. The world grew quieter after his wife passed, and even the wind seemed to whisper her name some days. But now there was to be a change. He had sent a letter months ago to a woman back east asking her to be his wife. A mail-order bride, the paper had called it. He wasn't after romance, just company, someone to keep the house warm and the place running right. The stagecoach came in late, its wheels grinding through mud. The driver jumped down first, red-faced and sweating. Then from inside stepped a young woman in a faded traveling dress. Her hands clutched a small bundle, and her eyes searched the horizon as if afraid of what she might find there. Calder took off his hat. "You must be Miss Rose Abernathy." She nodded, tightening her hold on the bundle. "Yes, sir." "And you're Mr. Vance." He nodded once. His eyes moved to the child in her arms, a baby, not more than 6 months old, wrapped in a quilt too fine for this part of the country. He felt his brow crease. "I didn't order to," he said before he could stop himself. Her lips parted, but she didn't flinch. "He's not mine. His mother died on the trail. I couldn't leave him." The driver tossed down her trunk and muttered something about the road to Bitter Creek being cursed. Then he climbed back up, cracked the reins, and was gone in a spray of dust. For a long moment Calder said nothing. The baby stirred and gave a soft cry that somehow cut through the noise of the plains. He could have turned her away right then, sent her back to the town. But he saw the weariness in her eyes, the way her fingers trembled as she held the child tighter. "The ranch is 5 miles east," he said finally. "Hope the boy doesn't mind the ride." She gave a quiet "thank you" and followed him to his wagon. The trail home wound through rolling sage and the last gold light of evening. Calder drove in silence, listening to the baby's small breaths. He had planned to ask questions later, about her, about that child, but every time he glanced at her, she was watching the horizon with the same lost look he'd once seen in a dying mare. Too proud to ask for help, too broken to stand alone. When they reached the ranch, twilight had fallen. The house stood plain but solid against the dark hills, a single light flickering in the window. She looked at it as if it were a church. Inside, he set her trunk down and cleared his throat. "You can take the spare room. There's a cradle in the barn, used to be my son's. I'll bring it in." She hesitated at the doorway. "Mr. Vance, I'll earn my keep. I can cook, clean, and mend fences if need be. But about the baby, please believe me, I didn't steal him. I just couldn't let him die out there." Calder met her eyes. They were steady, the kind that held truth but not peace. "We'll see what the sheriff says," he said quietly. Her face paled, but she nodded. That night, after the lamp went out, Calder lay awake listening to the soft cries of the baby down the hall. He had thought loneliness was a quiet thing. Now it had a voice. Morning broke cold and pale, the kind of dawn that carried a silence heavier than snow. Calder stepped out of his room and smelled coffee. It startled him a little. He hadn't smelled that in months. In the kitchen, Rose stood by the stove, hair tied back, sleeves rolled. The baby slept in a basket by her feet, wrapped tight against the chill. "I hope you don't mind," she said softly. "I found the tin by the shelf. Thought I'd make some." Calder nodded. "You'll find I don't talk much before sunrise." She smiled faintly. "Then I'll keep to the quiet." They ate without many words, the scrape of spoons, the faint hiss of the fire. She ate little, watching the baby like she was afraid he'd vanish if she blinked. Calder noticed that. He also noticed her hands, small but rough, like she'd known work before she ever came west. When breakfast was done, Calder saddled his horse. "Got to see the sheriff," he said. "If there's a missing child notice, I need to hear it from him." Rose looked up sharply. "You think I'd lie about that?" "I think I've been lied to before," he said, plain and simple. She didn't answer, just bent and lifted the baby, holding him close as if to shield him from something unseen. Calder rode into town by noon. The sheriff, a heavy-set man named Judd Gable, was leaning on the rail outside his office, chewing tobacco. "Well, I'll be," Gable said when Calder told him. "A woman shows up with a baby? You sure she's not running from something?" "That's what I came to ask," Calder said. Gable spat into the dirt and went inside. He came back holding a paper, creased, dusty, and stamped with a red mark. A wanted notice. The words hit hard. Missing child. Male, 6 months. Possible abduction from St. Louis trail party. Calder felt a cold pinch in his chest. The sketch was rough, but it looked close enough to make a man think twice. "Looks like trouble found you, Vance," Gable said. "Woman says the baby ain't hers, eh? That's what kidnappers always say." Calder folded the notice and slipped it into his coat. "I'll handle it." Gable gave a laugh that didn't sound friendly. "You always try to fix broken things, Calder. Sometimes they bite back." By the time Calder returned home, clouds had gathered thick and gray over the hills. Rose was hanging clothes on the line, the baby sleeping nearby in a basket. When she saw his face, she stopped. "What did he say?" Calder dismounted, slow and quiet. "There's a notice. A child was taken from a wagon train near St. Louis. Looks a lot like yours." Her hands went to her mouth. "That can't be. The mother. She died right before my eyes. I buried her myself." "I'm not saying I don't believe you," he said, voice low. "But the sheriff will want to talk. Folks in town already whisper." Rose's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "They'll think I'm a thief or worse." Calder didn't answer right away. He took off his hat and ran a hand through his hair, feeling older than he was. "You can stay here till we sort this out. But if that baby's got someone looking for him, it'll find its way here soon enough." She nodded, clutching the child tight. "I'll tell the truth when the time comes. I swear it." He looked at her long and hard, then turned toward the barn. The wind carried a faint rumble of thunder from far off. Something was coming. That night the wind rose strong enough to rattle the shutters. Calder sat by the fire, oil lamp burning low. The wanted notice spread on the table. The sketch of the missing child stared up at him, its eyes just dark smudges of ink. He heard footsteps behind him. Rose stood in the doorway holding the baby close. The light touched her face, showing the strain she'd carried since he brought her home. "You haven't said a word since supper," she said softly. "Is it about the poster?" Calder didn't look up. "I'm trying to make sense of it. You said the mother died on the trail. Did anyone else see?" Her fingers tightened on the baby's blanket. A few travelers stopped to help, but most rode on when the storm hit. No one stayed long enough to know her name. "That makes it hard to prove your story," Calder said, voice even but not unkind. Rose crossed to the chair opposite him. "Mr. Vance, I know how it looks, but I couldn't leave him. His mother was half mad from fever, calling for help. She pressed him into my arms before she passed. I buried her myself, marked the place with stones." He watched her eyes, steady, tired but clear. A liar's eyes often darted away. Hers did not. The baby stirred, letting out a small cry. Rose began to hum, the same tune she'd used every night since she came. A soft lullaby that didn't sound like anything from the frontier. "You've a kind way with him," Calder said after a moment. "I've had to be," she replied. "He doesn't know what's happening. He just wants to be held." Calder leaned back, sighing. "The world doesn't take kindly to women who arrive with secrets, or with children that ain't theirs." She met his gaze. "Then why didn't you send me away?" He looked toward the fire. Because I've seen good folk ruined by lies and by the truth. Sometimes a man doesn't know which is worse. For a while they said nothing. The wind screamed against the window panes, then faded into silence. The next morning the gossip began to spread. Calder noticed it when he rode into town for supplies. 2 women near the mercantile whispered as he passed. The blacksmith, usually friendly, gave him a nod but didn't smile. Even the store clerk hesitated when Calder mentioned Rose's name on the order slip. Word is, the man said, lowering his voice, your new bride came with a stolen baby. Sheriff's got eyes on her. Calder's jaw tightened. That's talk, not truth. Maybe. But talk spreads faster than truth. By the time he got home, the air around the ranch felt different. The calm he'd known for years was gone, replaced by something restless like the moment before lightning strikes. He found Rose mending a torn shirt on the porch. The baby slept in a cradle beside her. When she saw his face, she didn't ask what was wrong. She already knew. They're talking, aren't they? She said quietly. Yeah, Calder said. And they'll keep talking till something bigger comes along to chew on. She stared out at the horizon. I've seen what rumor can do, Mr. Vance. It ruined my sister once. Took everything from her. He glanced up. Your sister? Rose swallowed, looking down at the baby. She was the only family I had. She married a man back east. He wasn't kind. When she tried to leave, he said no child of his would grow up without his say. That's why I left. That's why I couldn't let this baby die. Her voice trembled at the edges but held steady enough for truth to show through. Calder didn't press further. Whatever comes, he said, you'll have a roof here till I know for sure what's what. The baby shifted, making a soft sound in his sleep. Calder looked down at him, small, innocent, unaware of the storm swirling around his name. He knew then that something bigger than gossip was on its way. 2 days later, the sound of hooves came down the ridge. Calder stepped out from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag, and saw a rider approaching. A stranger dressed in a long dust coat, a rifle strapped to his saddle. The man rode like he knew where he was going. When he reached the gate, he tipped his hat. Afternoon. Name's Briggs. I'm looking for a woman traveling under the name Rose Abernathy. Calder's jaw tightened. You found her. What's your business? Briggs slid off his horse and reached into his coat. He pulled out a folded paper, another notice. Got word from the St. Louis Marshal's office. They're offering a reward for the safe return of a missing infant. Says here the woman was last seen heading west. Calder didn't take the paper. You bounty men always come smelling for money? Briggs gave a small, humorless smile. Don't blame me for earning a living. I just follow orders. Now if the woman's innocent, she's got nothing to fear. Inside the house, Rose heard the voices. She stepped out with the baby in her arms, her face pale but calm. Briggs looked her over. You fit the description. That's the boy? He's not mine, she said, her voice shaking but firm. I told everyone that from the start. Briggs studied her for a long moment, then turned to Calder. Sheriff will want to talk to her. If she's clear, I'll be on my way. If not, I'll take her to St. Louis myself. Calder stepped closer, blocking the path to the porch. You'll speak to me first. Nobody's taken a woman or child off my land without proof. Briggs's eyes narrowed. You protecting her or hiding her? Calder's hand rested near his holster, but his voice stayed even. I'm protecting what's decent. The air between them turned tight as a pulled wire. Finally, Briggs gave a short nod. I'll be in town a few days. You think it over? The reward's hefty enough to fix that roof and then some. He swung back onto his horse and rode off, leaving dust and silence behind. Rose let out a shaky breath. He'll come back. Most likely, Calder said. That kind don't let go easy. She looked at the baby, who had begun to fuss, sensing her fear. I won't run, she said. Running only makes it worse. Calder studied her. She looked tired, worn by too many nights of fear. But beneath it there was steel. Then we'll face it head on, he said. The next morning, Rose went about her chores as if nothing had changed. She washed clothes, cooked supper, and mended a torn saddle strap. Calder watched from a distance, noticing how she worked with quiet focus. like someone trying to earn a place in the world before it was taken away again. That evening, a storm rolled in. Rain pounded the roof. Lightning flashed across the hills and the wind screamed through the cracks in the windows. Rose sat by the cradle, rocking the baby, humming her soft tune. Calder came in, dripping wet. "Fence is down by the creek. I'll fix it in the morning." She looked up, worry flashing in her eyes. "You shouldn't go alone," he smiled faintly. "I've been fixin' fences longer than you've been crossin' states." But she didn't smile back. "Still, thank you. For everything." He nodded, unsure what to say. He wasn't used to gratitude anymore. When the storm eased, they shared supper by lamplight. The sound of rain softened to a steady patter, almost peaceful. "Do you think truth always wins out?" Rose asked suddenly. Calder paused, staring into the fire. "Not out here. Out here, the one with the louder voice wins." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe we'll just have to speak louder." He looked at her then, really looked, and saw something he hadn't seen in years. Not just fear, but courage hiding beneath it. Outside, thunder rolled again, distant now. But Calder had a feeling it wasn't the last storm they'd face. The next morning broke quietly after the storm. The air washed clean and heavy with the smell of wet earth. Calder went out early to mend the fence near the creek. Rose watched him from the porch, the baby bundled against her shoulder. For a brief moment, everything seemed calm again, until she saw dust rising far off on the trail. By the time Calder looked up, the rider was already close. It wasn't Briggs this time, it was Sheriff Judd Gable, and 2 townsmen rode with him. Calder straightened slowly, hammer still in hand. "Mornin', Sheriff. You could have sent word." Gable swung off his horse. "Word travels faster when a man rides it himself. I got some questions for your bride." Calder didn't like the way he said bride, slow and sharp like a warning. "She's got work to do," he said. "You can ask me instead." "Not this time," Gable replied. "Town's stirring. Folks want answers. You've got a woman with a baby who might be stolen. I can't sit quiet on that." By then Rose had come out to the porch, the baby in her arms. Her face was pale, but she stood straight. "Sheriff, I'll answer your questions." Gable nodded, tugging off his gloves. "All right, Miss Abernathy, or is it Mrs. Vance now?" Calder cut in. "She's under my roof. That's all that matters." The sheriff ignored him. "You say the mother died on the trail. You bury her yourself?" "Yes," Rose said. "Near Dry Willow Pass, there was a small rise with rocks. I marked the place." "Anyone else see you do it?" "No, there was a storm. Everyone scattered." Gable gave a short laugh. "That's convenient." Rose's grip on the baby tightened. "I'm telling the truth." "Maybe," the sheriff said. "But I've got a bounty man saying different. Briggs claims the real mother's husband is heading west. Says he's looking to take back what's his." Calder took a step forward. "You mean the man who sold his wife off to pay his debts? The one who left her to die?" Gable's eyes flicked toward him. "You hear that from her or from the voices you make up when you don't like the law?" Calder's jaw clenched. "I hear it from decency." The sheriff sighed. "Look, Calder, I ain't here to fight you. I'm here to keep the peace. Bring her to town tomorrow. Let her tell her story to the judge. If she's clean, she walks free. If not..." He looked at the baby. "The law'll decide." When they rode off, Rose sank onto the porch steps. The baby whimpered softly. "They won't believe me," she whispered. Calder sat beside her, elbows on his knees. "You'll tell it straight. I'll stand beside you." Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. "You do that? Even if it ruins your name?" He looked at the horizon, the clouds breaking apart over the hills. Names don't mean much when a man's already lost everything once. That night Calder barely slept. Every sound outside, the creak of the windmill, the cry of a coyote, set his nerves on edge. He thought about the boy, about the tiny hand that had grabbed his finger earlier that evening. It didn't matter whose blood ran in the child's veins. He was already part of this place. Rose didn't sleep either. She sat by the cradle until the lamp burned low, whispering a prayer so quiet the words barely left her lips. The next day, when dawn came, they hitched the wagon and rode toward town. The baby slept between them, the road stretching long and silent ahead. Halfway there, Calder spoke. "You can still turn back. Say you changed your mind. I'll deal with them myself." Rose shook her head. "Running would make me guilty. I'm done running." He nodded once, respect glinting in his tired eyes. The town's roofs appeared in the distance, gray against the morning sun. Whatever waited there, they'd face it together. When they reached town, the streets were already busy. Wagons rolled past, dogs barked, and the smell of dust mixed with the smoke from the blacksmith's forge. But when Rose and Calder stepped down from their wagon, people stopped what they were doing. Conversations paused. Eyes followed them, some curious, some cold. Calder helped Rose down, keeping his voice low. "Hold your head high. Let him talk." She nodded, clutching the baby close. Her heart pounded, but her steps stayed steady as they walked toward the sheriff's office. Sheriff Gable sat at his desk when they entered, chewing on a toothpick. "Right on time," he said. "The judge will see you soon. Sit tight." Briggs was there too, leaning against the wall with that same half-smile. "Morning, folks. Hope the ride wasn't too hard." Rose looked straight at him. "You've been following me since St. Louis, haven't you?" He shrugged. "I follow paper, not people. The reward's real, and the man who posted it says he'll pay double for the boy's safe return." Calder glared at him. "That man ain't fit to raise a dog, much less a child." Briggs tilted his head. "Guess that's for the law to decide." Gable motioned them toward the back room. "Judge'll hear you now." Inside, the air was cooler and dim. Judge Marin sat behind a rough wooden desk, his spectacles perched low on his nose. He was an old man, known for being fair but slow to trust anyone's story. "Mrs. Abernathy," he began, "you stand accused of abducting a child from the St. Louis Trail. Tell me in your own words how this boy came to be with you." Rose swallowed hard. "Your Honor, his mother died during the storm near Dry Willow Pass. I tried to save her, but she passed before dawn. I buried her there and took the baby because there was no one else to care for him." Marin nodded slightly. "Any witnesses to this burial?" "No, sir." "Do you have anything that might prove your claim?" Rose hesitated, then reached into her satchel. She pulled out a small silver brooch. This was hers. I found it pinned to her shawl. I kept it in case someone ever came looking. The judge examined it, then passed it to the sheriff. "Markings on the back, looks like initials." "E.H., that match anyone you know, Briggs?" Briggs squinted. "The husband's wife was named Eliza, could be hers." Rose's eyes filled. "Yes, Eliza, she was my sister." The room went silent. Calder turned toward her, stunned. "You never said." Rose's voice trembled, but she stood tall. "I was afraid no one would believe me. My sister married a man named Henry Dalton. He treated her like property. When I got her letter begging for help, I left everything to find her. But by the time I reached her trail camp, she was dying. She made me promise to keep the child safe. From him." Judge Marin leaned back, his face unreadable. "Mr. Briggs, you said the husband is coming this way?" Briggs nodded. "He was 2 days behind me last I heard." "Then we'll hold judgment till he arrives," Marin said. "If what this woman says is true, we'll see it proven soon enough." Calder stepped forward. "Judge, let me take her back to my ranch till then. Folks out there talk too much and talk can turn mean." The judge considered, then nodded. "Fine, but she doesn't leave town again without my say-so." As they walked out, Briggs called after them. "You can hide her for now, Vance, but truth has a way of finding folks even in the middle of nowhere." Calder didn't look back. He just helped Rose into the wagon, the baby asleep in her arms. As they rolled away, she whispered, "He's coming, isn't he? Henry." Calder's hands tightened on the reins. "Then we'll be ready when he does." The sky above them darkened again, clouds heavy as iron. The storm wasn't over, only waiting. The wind carried the smell of rain again as they rode back to the ranch. Rose sat quietly, the baby asleep in her arms. Calder could see she was lost in thought, her gaze fixed on the horizon as though she expected to see ghosts riding out of the storm. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun had slipped behind gray clouds. Calder helped her down and unhitched the horses. Neither spoke for a while. The silence between them was heavy but not cold. It was the kind that comes when words won't do any good. After supper, Rose sat by the fire, rocking the baby. Calder stood by the window staring out toward the trail. He had rebuilt that fence 3 times in 5 years, and now it seemed all the work in the world couldn't hold back what was coming. "Calder," Rose said softly, "you don't have to stand up for me. If this man comes, he'll bring trouble." He turned. "Trouble's already here, Rose. Might as well face it under my roof." She looked up, eyes glistening in the firelight. "You don't even know me." He gave a faint smile. "I know enough. You could have run when Briggs showed up, but you didn't. That tells me more than most men ever will." The baby stirred and she hushed him gently. "My sister used to sing this same tune," she said. Said it kept nightmares away. Calder listened as she hummed the quiet song. It carried something warm through the room, something almost peaceful. For the first time in months, he felt like the walls didn't echo so much. The next morning, a writer came from town with a message from Judge Marin. Henry Dalton had arrived. Calder read the note twice, jaw tight. Rose froze when she saw his face. "He's here?" "He's here," Calder said. "Judge wants to hold a hearing tomorrow morning." Rose's hand shook. "He'll twist everything. He always does." Calder set the paper down. "He won't do it while I'm breathing." But later, when Rose stepped outside to hang laundry, she saw a shape on the far ridge. A lone rider watching from a distance. Her breath caught. She knew that posture, that stillness. It was Henry. She rushed back inside, heart pounding. "He's here already," she whispered. "He's watching." Calder went out with his rifle, scanning the horizon, but the ridge was empty now. Only dust swirling where the rider had been. "He's testing us," Calder muttered. "Seeing what kind of man he's up against." That night no one slept. The baby cried off and on, restless from the tension in the air. Calder sat by the door with his rifle across his knees, the lamplight casting long shadows. Near midnight he heard hoofbeats again, soft, circling the house. Then silence. He stepped outside, every muscle tight. The night was cold and still, the moon half hidden by clouds. Calder could hear the faint creak of saddle leather out near the barn. "Dalton," he called. "You come for the boy, you come through me first." No answer. Only the wind and the rustle of grass. After a moment the sound faded into the distance. Whoever it was, they were gone, for now. When he came back in, Rose was standing in the doorway, pale but steady. "He won't stop," she said. "He'll find a way." Calder set the rifle down. "Then we'll stop him first." She met his eyes. "Why are you helping me? You could lose everything." He thought for a long moment before answering. "Because someone once saved me when I didn't deserve it. Guess I've been waiting a long time to pay that debt forward." Outside, lightning flashed across the plains, distant but growing closer. The storm was gathering again, and Calder knew the next one wouldn't just bring rain. The next morning came gray and heavy. The sky hung low, clouds thick like smoke, and the air smelled of wet dust and tension. Calder hitched the wagon early. Rose wrapped the baby tight in a blanket, her hands trembling just enough for him to notice. "You don't have to go through this alone," he said, as he helped her climb up. She shook her head. "It's time it ends, one way or another." They rode into town in silence. Even the baby stayed quiet, as if he knew something serious was about to happen. When they reached the courthouse, half the town was already gathered. Men leaned against posts. Women whispered behind gloved hands. The bounty hunter Briggs stood by the door, hat tilted low, a smirk hiding under his mustache. Inside, Judge Marin sat waiting. Sheriff Gable was beside him, and Henry Dalton stood at the far end of the room. Rose froze when she saw him. He looked older, thicker around the middle, but his eyes, those hard, greedy eyes, hadn't changed. Dalton smiled like he was greeting an old friend. "Rose," he said smoothly, You've caused quite a fuss. I've been looking for my boy. He's not your boy, Rose said, voice shaking but clear. You lost that right the day you sold my sister. Gasps filled the room. Marin rapped the desk sharply. Order. Calder stepped forward. Judge, I was there when she told the story. I believe her. The woman's no thief, she's trying to save the child. Dalton sneered. And who are you? Another fool taken in by a pretty tale? Calder's hand tightened on his hat brim. A man who knows the look of truth when he sees it. Dalton laughed. Truth? Do you think you can see the truth? That baby's mine by law, and no sob story changes that. Rose lifted the brooch from her pocket and set it on the judge's desk. My sister's mark is on that brooch, EH for Eliza Harris. Ask him, Judge, ask what he did to her. Marin turned his gaze to Dalton. Mr. Dalton, what say you to this? Dalton's jaw twitched. A trinket proves nothing. My wife ran off with the boy. This woman, her sister or not, took what's mine. Briggs spoke up then, his voice careful. Judge, if I may, Dalton paid me to find the child, not the woman. He didn't say nothing about his wife being dead. Seemed awfully eager to claim the boy, but not her. The room went quiet. Marin's brows drew together. Mr. Briggs, are you implying this man withheld the truth from the court? Briggs shrugged, glancing at Dalton. I go where the money points, Judge, but lies don't pay well when they get caught. Dalton's face darkened. You watch your mouth, bounty man. Rose took a shaky breath. Judge, I buried my sister myself. She made me swear I'd keep her baby safe from him. I broke no law, just a promise I couldn't bear to keep quiet. The judge leaned back, eyes fixed on Dalton. Do you deny your wife is deceased? Dalton hesitated a moment too long. I don't know what lies she spun, but that's enough, Marin said sharply. Your silence says plenty. He turned to Gable. Sheriff, I'll have you ride to Dry Willow Pass. If there's a grave where she says, we'll know soon enough. Dalton started forward. You've no right. Gable stepped between them, hand on his revolver. Sit down, Henry. The tension cracked like thunder. Dalton glared at Rose, his face twisted with hate. You'll regret crossing me, he hissed. Calder stepped in front of her, steady as stone. You touch her or that child again, you'll answer to me first. The judge banged his gavel. Enough. Till we have proof the child stays under Mr. Vance's protection. This hearing's adjourned. The crowd buzzed as they filed out, whispering every word. Outside, the wind howled across the main street. Rose leaned against the wagon, shaking from head to toe. He won't stop, Calder. He'll come tonight. Calder looked toward the far hills, his eyes narrowing. Then he'll find we're not so easy to take. Lightning flickered on the horizon. Another storm was building, and this one was going to break wide open. That night the storm came hard and fast. Wind screamed across the plains, shaking the shutters and bending the trees like they were made of straw. Calder nailed boards over the windows while Rose rocked the baby near the fire, her eyes darting toward the door every few minutes. The lightning flashed white through the cracks, and thunder rolled so deep it rattled the dishes on the shelf. Calder checked his rifle, then another. He handed Rose a pistol. If he comes through that door, don't think, just aim. She nodded, clutching the baby close. I don't want more blood, she whispered. Sometimes mercy wears a hard face, he said quietly. Hours dragged by, the storm pounding harder. Then came a different sound, hooves. 4, maybe 5 riders cutting through the rain. Calder peered through the slit in the shutter and saw lanterns bobbing through the darkness. Henry Dalton was leading them, soaked but determined, his coat flapping like wings. They're here, Calder said. Rose rose to her feet, pale as the firelight. He'll take the baby. Not tonight, Calder said, voice firm. The riders stopped outside. Through the roar of the wind, Dalton's voice bellowed, Vance! Bring me my son or I'll come in and take him. Calder opened the door halfway, rain slashing across his face. You've no claim, Dalton. The judge said the boy stays with me. Dalton's eyes gleamed in the lightning. The judge ain't here now. The law doesn't reach this far in a storm. Calder raised the rifle. Then we'll see which of us the storm takes first. A tense silence. Then Dalton spat in the mud. "You'd die for another man's brat?" Calder's voice was calm, steady. "He's mine by choice, not by blood. That counts for more." Dalton motioned to his men. "Break the door!" Before they could move, a shotgun cracked through the darkness. The blast echoed through the rain. One of Dalton's men fell from his horse with a shout. Out from behind the barn stepped Sheriff Gable, soaked to the bone but holding his gun steady. "Back off, Dalton," the sheriff roared. "The judge sent me to keep the peace till morning. You're under arrest for obstruction and threat of force." Dalton's face twisted with rage. "You think this ends with your badge?" Another bolt of lightning split the sky. Dalton lunged forward, gun drawn, but Calder fired first. The shot tore through the wind, striking Dalton's shoulder. He fell hard into the mud, his weapon spinning away. Gable rushed forward, kicking the pistol aside and hauling Dalton to his feet. "You're done, Henry. The truth'll catch you, storm or no storm." Dalton groaned, clutching his wound. "You can't take what's mine," he spat. Rose stepped out onto the porch, holding the baby tight beneath her shawl. Her voice shook but carried through the rain. "You lost everything the moment you forgot what love was." Dalton stared at her, eyes full of hate and shame, before Gable dragged him away. The other men followed, their courage drowned by thunder. When it was over, Calder lowered his rifle. Rain poured down his face like tears. Rose stood frozen a moment, then whispered, "It's done?" "It's done," he said softly. She handed him the baby. Calder took the child in his arms, the tiny face calm even as rain dripped onto his blanket. "You're safe now, little one," he murmured. "Safe for good." Rose leaned against him, exhausted. The firelight flickered through the open door, warm against the cold rain. The storm began to ease, rolling away into the distance like an old enemy retreating at last. Calder looked down at Rose and the child. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll face the law again. But tonight we've already won." She smiled faintly. "You always say so little. But when you do, it feels true." He looked at her, mud-splattered, trembling, brave. "Because I mean it," he said. Outside, the wind quieted. The ranch stood scarred but standing like the two souls inside it, battered by life yet still holding on. Morning broke quietly in gold across the prairie. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sky washed clean in a world that smelled of wet sage and new beginnings. The fields shimmered with dew, and the ranch, though battered, still stood proud. Calder came out to the porch carrying the baby, wrapped snugly in a dry blanket. Rose followed with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. For the first time since she'd arrived, her face looked at peace. "He slept through the dawn," Calder said softly, looking down at the baby. "Maybe he knew the worst was over," Rose replied. They sat together on the steps, the board still damp from rain. For a while neither spoke. The silence between them felt easy now, not heavy like before. From the dirt road came the sound of hooves. Sheriff Gable rode up slow, hat low against the morning light. Behind him rolled a wagon, Judge Marin sitting upright in the back holding a stack of papers. Calder rose to meet them. Rose followed, clutching the baby close. "Mornin', Vance, Mrs. Vance," Marin said kindly as he climbed down. "We rode through the night to finish what we started. Did you find her?" Rose asked quietly. Marin nodded, his weathered face softening. "We found the grave just where you said. Cross-marked Eliza Harris, no doubt left." Rose's breath caught. She pressed her lips to the baby's head. "Then it's done." "It's truly done," the judge smiled faintly. "It is. And I have more," Mr. Dalton confessed on the trail. Said he forced his wife into that marriage. Said he meant to sell the boy to settle his debts. He'll stand trial in Fort Garland. Calder let out a slow breath, the weight of weeks finally lifting. "And the boy?" Marin handed over a folded paper. "By my word as judge, you're now his legal guardian. The adoption signed and sealed." Rose blinked back tears as Calder looked at the document. His name written in bold ink. Hers beside it, Calder turned to her, voice low. "He's ours now, Rose." Her lips trembled into a smile. "Ours," she repeated. The judge tipped his hat. You've both weathered a storm most wouldn't survive. Make a good life out here. He climbed back into the wagon and the sheriff followed. Soon the sound of their departure faded into the hills. Calder and Rose stood watching the horizon a long while. The sun kept rising, painting the plains in light. When they went inside, the house smelled of coffee and wood smoke. The fire crackled gently, chasing the chill from the walls. Rose laid the baby in a small cradle Calder had built from spare cedar planks the week before. "He'll grow strong here," Calder said. "The land's harsh, but it teaches a man what's worth keeping." Rose brushed her hand along the cradle's edge. "And it gives second chances if you're brave enough to take them." Calder looked at her then. Really looked, and in her tired eyes he saw not a stranger. Not a burden, but the partner he never thought he'd find again. He reached for her hand, rough against soft, and said quietly, "You came here with nothing but faith and a baby that wasn't yours. You gave both to me. I aim to spend the rest of my life earning that gift." Tears filled her eyes, but her smile held steady. "You already have." Outside, the wind swept through the grass like a whisper of grace. The sky stretched endlessly and bright, a promise of peace after so much pain. Later, as the day faded to amber, Calder stood by the corral fence with the baby in his arms. The cattle grazed calmly again, the world righting itself piece by piece. Rose came out to stand beside him, her shawl fluttering in the soft breeze. Calder looked at the boy, then at the horizon glowing red and gold. "He's ours now," he said quietly. Rose leaned her head against his shoulder, and were his. The last light touched them both, man, woman, and child, standing in a world reborn by storm, bound not by blood but by choice. If you felt this story in your heart, don't forget to like this video. It helps more folks find our tales from the frontier. Subscribe to Shadow Frontier Tales for more Wild West stories of courage, love, and redemption. And tell us in the comments, what part of this story stayed with you the most?